UNESCO demonstrated that artificial intelligent technology brings major benefits in many areas, but without the ethical guardrails, it risks reproducing real-world biases and ethical discrimination, fueling divisions and threatening fundamental human rights and freedoms. AI business models are hardly concentrated in just a few countries and a handful of firms, usually developed in a male-dominated teams without the cultural diversity that characterizes the world. Contrast this with the fact that half of the world's population still can count on a stable internet connection. Let's bring in Professor Christopher Lamont, Deputy Head of Program for Artificial Intelligence and Global Governance from the Global Governance Institute based in Brussels, Belgium. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Okay, let's start the Global Affairs Insider. Given the current trend and interest for artificial intelligence, how do you think AI will pivot the future of public administration?
This is a very good question, and I would like to start by noting that, first of all, it's everywhere, right? There's no facet really of human life that has been left untouched by artificial intelligence and algorithmic logics and digital technologies. And of course, when it comes to public administration, one of the first impacts is going to be that of data, datafication, right? There's so much information out there about society, which on the one hand can pose a challenge, but on the other hand, kind of these powerful analytic tools that you implied in your introduction can also potentially offer ways to provide for more efficient and more streamlined public administration and public services.
How do we differentiate AI from technology and digital world? How advanced is AI? And what is AI standard that is acceptable when it comes to its advancement?
This is a very, very good question also. And I think one thing that your audience should understand is that there has been a tremendous evolution in how we interact with kind of what you described as the digital world. And of course, the digital world in its most simple form simply refers to a means of communication in ones and zeros, right? So it's in the 1990s, if you go back in time, you might remember that when things like the internet and email and nascent social media platforms were new, people largely saw this digital space as one that was kind of creating a new free space for interaction outside of the analog kind of physical world. And because so much information was kind of being fed into this digital world, that it was seen as a regulatory problem, right? It was difficult to kind of know what is up there. And also it was seen as something that was almost by definition ungovernable. Now we fast forward in time and we see increasingly powerful analytic tools that would allow you to very quickly extract some specific piece of information you're looking for that's out there in this vast sea of information. On the one hand, that makes governing this space something that is now imaginable. And also, it makes that information that you put out there that you might have thought was only going to reach a small audience is something that is now everywhere, right? Potentially. And AI tools have become more powerful in part, of course, because we have more data that these tools can be trained on. And if you see kind of these generative AI tools and large language models, their ability to mimic our own natural language and ways of communication is getting better, right? And there might still be some gaps here and there, but nonetheless, there has been a tremendous increase in capabilities of AI technologies that the general public might be surprised about in terms of just what you can do today with AI. It has moved far beyond the digital world that we knew when this was all new decades ago.
Yeah, with AI in public governance and administration, do you think that privacy, secrecy, and data will become vulnerable and controllable?
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is something that societies are grappling with around the world. This is not a kind of uniquely kind of advanced industrialized society problem, or a problem of countries that are undergoing kind of rapid development, but rather this is a global problem. One, because these technologies are accessible. And so if you think about, for example, the question of privacy and surveillance. Today, most of us, whether we know it or not, are effectively live streaming our lives out there into this digital world, right? Through our interactions with social media, through our kind of sessions of a smartphone, right? Or through other tools that we use in our homes to kind of turn on the lights or do other things for us, right? So we're kind of producing a lot of data about our daily lives. And as I mentioned at the outset, on the one hand, right, there's this huge amount of data that is being produced by human beings today. And the initial assumption was perhaps that it's so much data that kind of a state or a government can't really harness this with any great effectiveness. But now, right, if you think about surveillance and privacy, you think about things like cameras in public spaces, these are not cameras that will simply kind of, if you think about like a crime documentary or something, and the police will go and they'll like ask somebody to kind of give them their surveillance footage from a shop or something like that, and they can look at it physically as a person. That's not the model today, right? Rather, these cameras have inbuilt analytical tools that will be able to tell you a lot in real time, right, about kind of who's there, and allow you to track in real time kind of where people are going. And you think about what the impact on society of that kind of surveillance will be. These are questions that, as you alluded to at the outset, are generating a lot of debates and also attempts to regulate these technologies. You might think about the European Union's AI Act in terms of attempting to draw a line between just how invasive some of these tools are, and also kind of take into consideration our right to privacy, right, and a private life that is existing in a space that's getting a lot smaller today.
If AI is the future culture in governance, how should the nation prepare itself?
Oh, I would say there's one key term here, right, that countries should look at and focus on, and that's literacy, AI literacy. There are a number of challenges that AI technologies will bring with them as more and more of these technologies come online and become more widely accessible, that a lot of publics are not really ready to grapple with. So for example, when you look at video or you look at kind of any sort of imagery online, we're at a point today where if you're looking at something and it's a video that's there online, we can't tell easily if it is genuine or if it has been generated by artificial intelligence. And you might think this is something that's kind of fun to play with or something that's humorous, but think about the consequences in the context of elections or national politics, right? That if something can be produced that looks real, even if it is debunked, it might have an impact. It might be believed by enough people to be consequential. And if you don't have an understanding of just how accessible these technologies are, you don't have that sense of skepticism towards what you're seeing that will need, and that will be inbuilt within this AI literacy. But also it relates to something else that I think you had mentioned at the outset in your introduction, and that's kind of around issues of non-discrimination. That a lot of this data has been trained within particular geographic regions and particular cultures, and therefore it reproduces the biases of these regions. And there needs to be an understanding of that. So a broad understanding of how these technologies learn and the data that they have been trained on. And if you think about a lot of these tools, you might also think about how this would impact, you might think about kind of daily life. It might be that banks, for example, or credit card companies, or all these other services that you encounter in your daily life no longer have a human being making decisions about how much credit you might have or a loan that you might be applying for, but might be relying on an AI tool to make this decision for them. And so on what basis is that decision being made, and how can one potentially challenge right, this decision? These are questions that all require a certain degree, a certain basic level of understanding of how AI works and what it is.
Professor Christopher Lamont, Deputy Head of Program for Artificial Intelligence and Global Governance from the Global Governance Institute in Brussels, Belgium. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Just as a footnote, I'm physically in Tokyo, but that's
Okay. This is Dr. Rayron Del Rosario. That's the Global Affairs Insider. Follow us to our next episode only here in IPDCI News Channel.